So we're going to have our sermon. Pastor Donia has prepared a great sermon today, and she's going to be sharing that in a few minutes. We're going to have a video, and if you know the song, feel free to sing along. If you don't, just enjoy, meditate, whatever you want to do. It's a really deep song about relationship. So we're going to have that on and have our sermon right after that.
That far. I ain't made for rivalry. I can never take the world alone. I know that in my weakness I am strong, but it's your love that brings me home. Brother, let me be your shelter. Never leave you all alone. I can be the one you call when you're low.
Good morning. I hope you all enjoyed that video. I feel like it's a great lead-in to my topic today. And I'm just going to say it right now, you might want to take this video and put it on a playlist for this week, or find it on YouTube and play it in the background. I think it'll be a great reminder of what we're going to be talking about today. So we're coming close to the end of our sermon series on becoming God's sons and daughters, having to do with spiritual maturity. We have one more week after this, but I'm going to go over the topic, the points, and then we're going to go into the topic. So this is the third major point of our vision, which is we are every person growing to spiritual maturity through studying God's word, prayer, making devotions, small groups, and taking on a ministry to care for the needs of and give to others. So we've already talked about studying God's words, prayer, and making devotions or spiritual posturing. And today we're going to be talking about relationships, growth through relationships, and small groups. So what I love about this whole point that we're talking about here is that it encompasses so many different aspects of our life of faith. These are like the pillars of our life of faith, right? All of them are very important to our growth. We can't focus on one and not do the others, because then it's like a table that's missing some legs, right? And what's also beautiful is that God created us all in his image, but we're all in we reflect different aspects, different factors of God. So we are all different from each other, even though we are all made in God's image. So likewise, we all learn in different ways. Some things resonate with us more than other things. So for some people, reading and having the words in front of their eyes and they're taking it in through their visual senses is something that really helps things to sink deeply into people's hearts. And other people, they need to hear it. They need to hear the vibrations coming in through their ears. And so for those people, Sunday service is like one of the best times of the week. And sometimes it's prayer, it's speaking to God. But no matter how you feel you learn, if you're a visual learner, an auditory learner, kinesthetic learner by doing, it must include action in our life. For any real life of faith, the things that we learn and experience with God, and the things that we understand, they must show up in our life. They must show up in reality, in the world, for it to be a real life of faith. And so this is where we're leading into these last 2 points of our series of taking relationships in small groups and taking on a ministry. And so when I talk about showing up in our life, what does that mean? First and foremost, this is something we talk about a lot in our families, right? We're the Colorado Family Church. And we really believe that everything good and also everything bad originates in the family. And so healing, the future, starts in our family. And so we are always talking about the spousal relationship, the relationship between husband and wife, and parents and children, and brothers and sisters. It's like the very core of our faith. However, it is not only meant to stay there in our families. Rather, the family is a foundation. It's like cornerstone. The cornerstone is not the completed product. A cornerstone is the basis that everything else is built off of. So the family is a foundation, a cornerstone for a peaceful community, nation, and world. So first and foremost, right, apply what we learn and what our inspirations into our family. But where we take that next is so important, and that is leading me to small groups. I think that when I say small groups, sometimes people are like, what does that even mean? Because I think there's a lot of, I don't know, if I look at mega churches, for example, they have a very intricate structure for their small groups because there's so many people and they all need to be taken care of. So there's, everybody gets divided up into equal amounts of people, and they are designated a house to meet at and a time. And That's some people's small groups. But also, you could think of a small groups as your coffee shop meeting with some girlfriends over coffee. So we'll talk a little bit about what small groups are. But I do believe that small groups and relationships outside of our family are not only crucial to our own personal growth, but actually our church's growth and the growth of humanity. Because something happens in small groups that doesn't happen in reading. Something happens in relationships with your brothers and sisters that doesn't happen in a prayer to God. Something happens in small groups that you can't get even at Sunday service when you're sitting with all of those same brothers and sisters in the pews. There's the opportunity in small groups to dialogue, to ask questions, not just how are you, but ask questions about life. Ask questions about the things that we're really wondering about in our hearts. There's the opportunity to bounce off ideas with one another, and especially to really support each other and to share our lives with each other. Maybe you have something in your heart that you're just not quite sure about how this is supposed to work in your life. I have a topic that I've been wondering, and I haven't found quite the right group of people to figure this out with. It has to do with original values. So maybe we can figure this out between some of us sometime. But maybe you have something that you're looking for. Maybe you have some difficulties in your life, and you don't need somebody to solve your problems, but you just like somebody to be there with you and to encourage you. I have this is a quote from the Bible. This is from Acts. And this is in the very early days of Christianity, before it was called Christianity. These were just the followers of Jesus because their hearts were moved, their lives were touched, and they wanted to do something. It just had to be expressed in their lives. So they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. I guess you could call this the world's first small groups. And what I love about this is that it wasn't like Jesus said, okay, now you have to make a small groups. But because their hearts were touched, because they felt alive and they felt moved, there was like nothing else for them but to do, but they had to see each other. They want to see each other every day. And it dictated how they lived their lives in accord with one another. And I like how this says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. They were reading or they were learning. And where did it go? There's something about prayer here. I just saw it. Oh, breaking of bread and to prayer. So they were also praying. They've got the pillars, right? But also to fellowship of the breaking of bread and sharing meals and supporting one another who had difficult times. I feel like this is a little bit of a blueprint for how we are to live as people who have been touched by God. This is something that you don't get just in prayer or by attending service once a week. Although I've seen people really try their best, I think if you really milk it, you can get a lot out. But people really yearn for these kind of relationships, not just How are you doing? I'm great. How are you? I'm fine. Relationships. And when people come to church, especially, I feel like if people are looking for a new church, they're visiting churches, they're not actually really looking for a good preacher. What they're looking for is a place where they feel they belong, a place where they feel welcomed, where it feels warm, a place where they can have true friendships, God-centered friendships, a place where they feel loved. So this only happens in relationships. And it's, I think, maybe best achieved through small groups. But it's interesting, the things that people want in small groups also can make people afraid of small groups. Some people are ready to just, pour their heart out, tell you my worries. But I think a lot of people, although they would like to do that in a way where they felt received and not judged and in a safe environment, many people are scared to open up. They might be afraid that they have to share their less than perfect life. That people might see that although their lives look like they've got it all put together from the outside, that maybe there's some missing pieces. Because it requires vulnerability to be in close relationships with people. And what does the word vulnerable mean? It means you're not protected. If you are a rabbit and there is a bird of prey, you do not want to be vulnerable because you could get hurt. We're not rabbits though, okay guys? When we let down our barriers or we let down our protection, that also, while the possibility of hurt is there, it also allows for the possibility of closer bonds and trust and the experience of true love. So that might leave something for you to grapple with. Everybody's a little different. But I also find it interesting that something that many of us feel that we should do. What is something that many of us feel like we should be doing as people of God? We feel like, I should be sharing this, right? You can call it whatever you want. I should be witnessing, or I should be evangelizing, or I should be doing tribal messiahship. Whatever you call it, I think many of us have this on our hearts that we should do this. We want to, but I think we don't necessarily know or have the skill set to do it well, and then we're afraid of doing it. But small groups is one of the best stepping stones to that point. We know we should care for our families. We know we should create good relationships there. But what about in our community? What about between the second pew and the fourth pew? And what about the 10th pew to the 5th pew? What about with our family members here? Not our blood family, but our God family. Do we really, really care and make the actual effort, not just, I'm thinking about, Eliza there. I really love her. But when I see her, I just walk by. No, I'm not talking about the thinking of love or the feeling of love, but the action of love. Do we really make the actual effort to express that care and support on a regular basis? This is a quote from Reverend Moon. Have you ever loved anyone with your whole heart? If you have never experienced that, if you have never loved a person with all your heart, how can you love God? When you have not loved man with all your heart, you cannot say you love God. If you really love God, you must be loving your brothers and sisters whom God loves. So do we really care and express it? I feel like we have many saints in this room, and we have many saints in our faith community. But if there's something that we have fallen short on, collectively, not everybody, there are many saints in this area too, but collectively, I feel like this might be one area where we haven't really stretched our muscles so much. But think of it this way. If we were regularly reaching out to those right here in front of us, if we were regularly meeting with, cooking for, inviting over, supporting our brothers and sisters, and that becomes a muscle that we strengthen, it's something we're used to using, then it's only natural that we start to do that with everyone else that we meet. It actually becomes a lifestyle that grows your heart and envelops other people naturally. It's really one of the fastest, and it's also personally one of the fastest ways to mature your spirit. So when I'm talking about our desire to witness, evangelize, tribal messiahship, we can try to force ourselves to go out there and do it. But many times we aren't equipped unless we have the practice. So who better to practice with than who's right here? So there's kind of a catch-22 with this, though, about small groups. The thing about small groups is that it cannot be forced. So here I am talking about small groups and encouraging you, but it can't be forced. It's not like something that Mike and I can do and say, okay, now you first 3 rows, you're a small group. You're all going to go meet up at Lorette's house on Thursdays at 6. First Uyanga's going to prepare dinner, and then Nancy's going to prepare dinner, and it's going to, we're going to cycle through it. Okay? You guys ready to go? All right, have a great small groups. We can't really do that and expect that to actually be successful and sustainable for a long period of time. A small group's experience really is a grassroots thing. It has to come from the people who feel the calling in their heart, the people who are yearning for real relationships, yearning to be nourished and to nourish others. So, I've never actually experienced a structured small groups like you might experience if you go to a megachurch or something, but I have had a lot of experience in small groups that have shaped my life and really changed my heart. Some of the things that I think of are back when I was on our mission program after high school and was in a small group, usually around 4 or 5 people, basically living out of a van, traveling the country, trying to raise funds for our causes. And when you're living in really close quarters with some people, sometimes you don't always get along. Sometimes their feet are smelly. Sometimes they snore when they're sleeping. Sometimes they talk and there's just this nasally sound that after hearing it day after day, you just want them to stop talking. But by looking deep and talking to God, I realize, okay, this person is not the enemy. We're on the same team here, right? And God is on our team too. So I've got to work this out. And in working it out, I've actually made some of my best friends. One of my best friends just had a baby for her first child, even though I've almost 10 years with kids, and she just had her first, and almost everything in her life is different. She grew up differently, she was sporty, she was Asian, she had all these different things going on in her life that were so different from me. And I many times I've thought I would never have been her friend if we were in high school together. But by being in a small group together, we found something that's deeper than our, what's it called? The external things that bring us together, right? We found our commonalities. We found something deeper. Another experience with small groups I had was when we were living in Missouri before we came here to Colorado. we were living with my parents, who lived on a farm, who lived about 2.5 hours away from a major city. And in that major city, there was only a few other small groups of people with our same faith, but there were a few young families and young couples. And because there were so few, we loved being together. So about once a month, we'd get together and we'd have a themed night. We had an Asian night, we'd cook Asian food. We had a Mexican night, we'd cook Mexican food. And then we'd get together, we'd read something, and we'd share, and we'd laugh, and we'd talk. And we realized that as much as we love each other, yeah, our relationships aren't perfect, but we can support each other. And there was a lot of comfort in that, and there was also a lot of empowerment in that, knowing that you could be there for somebody else. We also have a informal mommies group here. We get together for coffee, do fun things together. And I also experienced a small group feeling just by getting together over coffee with a friend. Sometimes I experience that in times of crisis, when you're kind of thrown together because of the need, but that you're able to be there for somebody else when you're in the thick of it. So, what is a small group? What should it look like? It can look like anything you want it to look like. You could do a formal reading and discussion and prayer. You could gather together around a particular topic, around parenting, around what do we do as we're getting older in age? What is our purpose and our contribution? You could get together around that. I know that I've heard that Rick Warren, who founded this huge mega church and then it's expanded all over the world. One of their small groups was a couple of guys who worked on cars, and they created a small groups where they offered their services to the elderly people in the community. That can be a small group. As long as the heart is to have God there and to make real relationships, and that you don't want to be the same person you were before you started it, I say that's a small group. So if you would like to start something, maybe you've had something already stirring in your heart for a while and you just need an avenue to get it out. If you would like to start something, please talk to Mike or myself. We love it. We're happy to support it. We won't control it, but we want it to be something that nourishes you and nourishes the people that you care about. What I feel like all of this comes down to is that the heart of small groups comes from loving your brothers and your sisters. Loving God by loving our brothers and sisters whom God loves. And not just thinking about loving them or feeling like, oh, I really love that person. But love as a verb, right? We've heard that before. Love is a verb. I really love the story in the Bible. Let's not forget that from the principled point of view, when Jacob and Esau embraced each other, this was one of the greatest moments in all of the Old Testament biblical history. When you think of the Old Testament, isn't there so much to think about? Like, wow, but there was Noah, who God spoke to him once, and he spent 120 years building an ark on top of the mountain. Like, that's pretty notable, right? Or Abraham, who was willing to offer his one and only son Isaac to God after being promised to him that through this son there would be as many children as stars in the heavens, but being willing to offer that up. That's pretty notable. These are incredible testaments of faith, these examples I just gave of Noah and Abraham. These were testaments of faith. These were foundations of faith. And they were incredible, and they were notable, and they were necessary. However, history could not progress. Jesus could not actually come. There was no foundation for Jesus to come until Jacob and Esau embraced each other, because they actualized their faith in substance, in reality, in their relationships between people, not just with God, not just expressing your faith to God, but expressing your faith and your love to people. That was actually the first time ever in biblical history that happened. That was the foundation of substance. So substance means when faith becomes real in relationships between brothers. What did Jacob do? Whoops. Here's it. I still messed it up. There it is. This can't just look like a picture of people hugging each other, but did you know that Esau, for 21 years, at least, hated Jacob? He wanted nothing more than to wring his neck. And when he heard that Jacob was coming, he assembled an army of 400 soldiers so that he would not leave any room for mistakes, and he would make sure that he was dead. But he was moved by Jacob's heart to love him and offer everything to him as he approached. He sent his animals. He sent his wives. He sent everything that he owned. Everything that Esau felt he had stolen, he offered to him. And while he had all his soldiers prepared, ready to kill him, when the moment came and Jacob came bowing to him, it was like a curse was broken. It was nothing but love and embrace was there. So Jacob won Esau's heart. Esau forgave Jacob for stealing his birthright and embraced him. Because of this story, and there was something new that happened in history that never had happened before. And based on that, in the future, Jesus could come. So Jesus came 2,000 years ago. But many people still don't actually recognize Jesus. Many people still haven't received Jesus personally into their life. And you might wonder why. Because isn't it amazing what Jesus did? But actually, each one of us needs to make our own foundation of faith and our own foundation of substance to receive the Messiah into our hearts. We each need to make our foundations of faith and substance. All right. This is another quote from Reverend Moon. I know you love me and love God, but when I look at you, I want to see whether you have that love among yourselves. That becomes my joy and something beautiful to behold. In order to become true sons and daughters, you must first love each other more than your parents. If you are loving in that way, then you are positioning yourself closest to the parents or to God. Then, even if you don't know the principle intellectually, no one could say that you don't know the truth. Isn't that beautiful? So there are people who have at one time received Jesus, or felt the hand of God in their life, but may now be feeling stale. Maybe some of us feel like that. You want a refresher? Make a foundation of faith and of substance in your life. Don't back off when it comes to the part of substance. I feel like sometimes we get gung-ho and we're like, okay, God, I'm going to pray for 21 days, or I'm going to fast for 24 hours, or I'm going to do this for you. And then you kind of feel good after you did that, but we forget about the relationship part. So let's do this. Let's make our own foundation of faith and substance in our relationships with our brothers and sisters here. Let's see each other with God's eyes right? See from God's viewpoint on each other. I know you see lots of things with your own viewpoint. Maybe some of those things aren't the things that you want to see. But let's put on God's glasses, right? Let's see each other with God's eyes. Figure out how that relationship can work, and then multiply that goodness. That's all I have, guys. But please, take that song. Put that somewhere on your computer, on your phone. Listen to that. Let that be an impetus for you to reach out to somebody. And whether it's just a one-on-one phone call, or whether it's something that you really want to create that's sustainable, that can support a group of people over time, and you want to create some kind of small group, some kind of support network, start thinking how you can do that. Talk to Mike and myself. We're happy to support you. If you need something, some pieces are missing, we'll try to help you figure it out. And I can't wait to talk about our last topic next week. This is where I get excited. I just love the relationships part. So please join me in prayer as we finish this up. Morning, our most beloved Heavenly Parent. When I say the word parent, it automatically implies that we are your children. Heavenly Parent, I feel so blessed to be able to stand here and to, with one glance, look at all of my brothers and sisters, all of my family members, and see your love radiating onto them and in their lives, Heavenly Parent. But many times we don't feel like that, Heavenly Parent. Many times we feel that we're a little bit lost, or we're a little bit alone, or a little bit estranged from you and from each other. Heavenly Parent, I pray that we can pray, we can read your words, we can make actions in our life that posture us to become closer to you, but that with that we can then take the action to reach out to somebody else. To say, hey, I need some support. Or say, hey, you look like you could use a little bit of love. Come over and have dinner. Heavenly Parent, I pray that these many saints who are in this room, who've done incredible things in their lives of faith, can continue walking this path and can continue expressing their faith in action. Heavenly Parent, please be with each one of us, each and every one of our families. Please be with our community. Please let us become a community that can just multiply goodness to our neighbors and to the city and to other communities and to this world, Heavenly Parent. As we see from the story of Jacob and Esau, true love can dissolve all hurts. True love can melt away pain and sadness. It's almost miraculous what true love can do. And even though this world can seem to be in a dire situation, even though there is much pain, many people suffering, many people experiencing so much heartache in their lives, we have seen that true love can switch everything. Heavenly Parent, I pray that we can receive your love into our lives, know that that is real, and then share that with others. We want to offer this service this week to you, and I pray this in my name, Michael and Adonia Hendrick, a Blessed Central family. Amen and Aju. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a really great message. As Adonia was talking about her experiences with small groups, I was remembering also my experience at the one we had in Missouri. And when we were living in Missouri, our church was 2.5 hours away. So when we wanted to go to church, it was basically an all-day thing. It was a 5-hour round trip. But when you get there, it's just a little room in like a little plaza, little rundown plaza. And there's no Sunday school, there's no like place to cook food. It's just like a little room. And I would many times, come away from service feeling kind of uninspired, or like, I don't know if that was worth a 5-hour drive. But but one thing that and we did have good messages and we had a good community there, but one of the things that I really remember closely, close to my heart, was this experience in that small group. And it was just like 3 or 4 of us. We would get together and we would read some God's words together. And I was amazed by the kind of deep conversations that we would have. And sometimes a husband would be like, he would start sharing just out of nowhere, just start sharing intimate things about how him and his wife, when they were in the early years of their marriage, and mistakes that he made. It wasn't something that was asked for, or like, oh, you have to share intimate details or something like that, but just people have things in their lives. We all have things in our lives that we want to be able to share, and you can't do that in the Sunday service. You can't do that when you go down to the dining room and you're with 100 people and there's like crazy noise and kids are running around. You can't get into a deep conversation. I've seen people try to do that and it just doesn't work. Like, good for you if you've somehow managed to make it work, but it's really hard. But we need that, and oftentimes we in our lives we're with coworkers, we're with friends, we're around people, but there's no closeness there, and so that's why this is so important. Without this, many of us won't have those kind of deep relationships, but we need to have them. It's so important for our life of faith, for the sake of our church and community as a whole. So it's such an important message, and thank you so much for sharing it so well. So we're just going to go through a few local announcements. First of all, the Bible study this week is, what does the Bible say about marriage and family? So we're going to be going into this really important topic. And remember, we're the Colorado Family Church. Family is the most important thing. So we're going to look at what the Bible says about that. So that's every Thursday at 7 p.m. So please come and enjoy the experience that Dr. Hendrick has prepared to look into the Bible on these really important topics. We're having a movie night this Friday at 7, Bruce Almighty. This is a classic movie. Let me read a little bit about it. Bruce Nolan, who is played by Jim Carrey there, is a television reporter in Buffalo, New York. He is discontent with almost everything in life, despite his popularity and the love of his girlfriend, Grace. At the end of the worst day of his life, Bruce angrily ridicules and rages against God, and God responds. God appears in human form and, endowing Bruce with divine powers, challenges Bruce to take on the big job and see if he can do any better. So, sounds pretty interesting, right? So, if you want to see that movie, that'll be here on Friday at 7 p.m. There'll be popcorn, so please come and enjoy together. We are preparing for a really great Christmas party. It'll be Sunday, December 16th. So please make sure to come, and that'll be right after service, and we'll share more details as we get closer and have more details to share. Every week, I give a short 20 to 30-minute presentation, and the presentation covers a little bit about what makes our church unique, how we got to where we're at, and where we're going forward as a community, what's our vision. So if you're new here, you'll recognize that there are certain aspects of us that are a little bit untraditional or different. So we'd love to have an opportunity to share a little bit with you about why that is and who we are. And I'll be giving that today right after lunch. That'll be right in the French room, which is right next to the cafe. And then lastly, I didn't update the slide. Today, the Tamayos are cooking, and we do need a little help with cleaning. So if you are available and don't mind helping out with cleaning up some dishes, wiping some tables, really appreciate that. Next week, we'll be cooking, so that'll be good. So that is that.